the Pittsburgh Steelers have traded George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys in exchange for a third rounder for next year's draft and a fifth rounder for 2027. So a lot of fans hate this move and they hate this trade. Personally, I don't understand why they hate this trade. I mean, sure, Pickens is a talented player. I'm not denying that. He's a talented player. He's a great player. And I understand that, yeah, we would have liked to have seen just one season with him and DK Metcalf. But what happened to Pickens not being a team player? What happened to all the people who were screaming to the high heavens about Pickens, giving up on routes, not giving his 100% effort on routes, picking fights with corners at the end of the game, not blocking at the goal line when it was either Najee or Warren. It was one of those two. I think it was Najee against the Colts in 2023, where he didn't block, and it would have been a for sure touchdown. What happened to all that? It's amazing how people forget that the attitude of a player can completely overshadow their talent on the field. And that's why I wanted Pickens gone. So to that I say, good riddance to him. And if you really think about it, the Dallas Cowboys are a perfect fit for George Pickens, okay? Because Jerry Jones has this reputation, not even a reputation, because he does it so often, okay? Jerry Jones has a knack for getting the most controversial players and the most flamboyant players in the NFL on his team. Which is why I'm really surprised that back in the day, Jerry didn't go after Antonio Brown. And speaking of that, it just seems like this fan base hasn't learned a thing from Antonio Brown. Oh, Mac, well, the Steelers haven't won anything since 2018 when Antonio Brown left after that season. Oh, get ready for no playoff wins. Get ready for what? We haven't won a playoff game since 2016. Did you forget that too? So what am I getting ready for? This is exactly what the Steelers need to do. If there's any franchise in the NFL that needs a culture change and they need to change their ways because what they are doing is so outdated and stale to the fan base, it's this franchise. If anything, this trade right here just solidifies that Aaron Rodgers won't be coming over to the Steelers, which I do not want Aaron Rodgers over here, okay? Because think about it. If we were going to get Aaron Rodgers here, that would imply that we were going to keep that tandem of DK Metcalf and George Pickens. Now what they did is that they now have 11 draft picks for next year, and that could be bumped up to 12 or even 13. We need as much draft capital as we can get, and we got some more additions with that, with getting rid of George Pickens, the quitter, and the selfish diva on this team. Less drama to deal with. Did you guys forget about that? And you're telling me to prepare for no playoff wins. We've already gone 8 years without a playoff win, okay? But the fact that Pickens is gone, the cancer, you got rid of a locker room cancer, you got rid of a diva. It needed to happen. Okay? And really, when you think about it, nothing's changing with Pickens either. He's going from a team that has no quarterback, essentially, to a team who has a quarterback but won't get the job done there either. Because when you think about it, sure, Dak Prescott, he's a good quarterback and all, but if Pickens was wanting to win something, and if he was wanting to, go on deep playoff runs or whatever, Dak Prescott ain't much of a better choice either. Like, I got the assumption that Pickens wanted to be on a team like probably, I don't know, San Francisco or Detroit, Kansas City, where he has a legitimate shot of making a deep playoff run. But no, he goes to Dallas, who at this point are basically just the NFC version of us, as much as I hate to admit that. Okay? They're basically just the NFC version of us, but they have a little bit more of a quarterback than us. That's basically all that happened with Pickens. You can have all the talent you want. You can be the dynamic player all you want. If you don't have good character and you don't put the team before yourself, then you shouldn't be on the team. That's all there is to it. So, that's all I got to say. All you Steeler fans that wanted him gone and now you're crying that he's gone, spare me your tears, okay? Because you should have the same energy that you should have had when you first said that you wanted him gone, and now all of a sudden you're complaining that he's gone. You're a bunch of hypocrites. Me, I mean what I say. And I've wanted Pickens gone for like a year and a half now, and now he's gone, and I couldn't be happier that he's gone.
You know what? I am not what you would call a player fan by any stretch of the imagination, okay? Because at the end of the day, I'm a fan of this, the logo. But seeing what George Pickens has done with the Dallas Cowboys, it just gives me, it really just opens my eyes on what this franchise truly is right now. And there's a reason for the lack of Steeler content for me this year. It's because I've made so many videos on this in the past, calling out the coaching staff, calling out Art Ernie II, calling out Omar Khan. I've made so many videos about this in the past that I've just grown sick and tired of it, that I really just don't have the energy for it. And I just really didn't have a whole lot of time this year. But, I can only ignore it for so long. I can only resist it for a certain amount of time. So, back in spring, it's funny, with all my subscribers, or they're so quick to jump on me if I say something wrong. Oh, look at this dumbass. Oh, look at this moron. Look how wrong he is. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Hey, I can sit down here and admit that I was wrong. All right? I got no problem admitting I was wrong. I am not right about this team all the time, but when I'm wrong, I will fucking sit down here and tell you that I was wrong. And here I am right now. You want me to eat crow on George Pickens? Here I am. The day before Thanksgiving, I'm going to be eating a nice big plate of crow to go along with my turkey. So George Pickens is lighting it up down in Dallas. And at the back of my mind, I kind of thought that he would be a little more productive in Dallas, but I was still on the train of, well, he's a diva, he's a crybaby, he's a wuss, he don't try hard. Well, guess what? The fact of the matter is, George Pickens didn't try hard here, and he half-assed routes, he didn't block for his players here, he didn't get physical, and he wasn't being productive because of this godforsaken, mutilated coaching staff to go along with this front office that doesn't know their ass from their elbow when it comes to talent. And if it was just George Pickens that was the case for this with the Pittsburgh Steelers, then I'd be like, oh, those damn Steelers, they let a very good wide receiver slip right through their fingers. But now that I thought about it a little bit more, this is just another chapter in the same novel that the Steelers have done with talent over the last, I would say, like 5 years or so. It's not just George Pickens. How about Kevin Dotson being out of place on the offensive line? Look at what he's doing with the Rams, I think he's with now. Look at what he's doing with the Rams. How about James Conner with the Arizona Cardinals? Yeah, I know he's out for the rest of the season with an injury, but James Conner, very productive with the Arizona Cardinals. And when James Conner was here, he was always injured. He was lackluster. Couldn't find gaps. Wasn't getting a lot of rushing yards. Wasn't getting a lot of carries. That's because James Conner had a piss poor coaching staff that didn't know how to use him. Kevin Dotson was a bust on this offensive line because he didn't have an offensive line coach. Because the Steelers didn't know how to use him. They constantly put him out of place. And George Pickens, his career high in touchdowns with the Steelers was 5 back in 2023. He wasn't getting targeted. He wasn't getting the right routes ran with him. He wasn't getting productive. He wasn't getting the most used out of him because of the fucking coaching staff here. That's why he looked like a bum. That's why he was half-assing plays. That's why he was crashing out here. That's why he was not getting the most used out of him. Because Tomlin and Arthur Smith and Matt Canada for a time didn't know how to use him. This coaching staff doesn't know the strengths of their own players. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. You know what? I will never blame another player for half-assing plays, for crashing out, as long as they wear this logo. Not that I condone what Pickens did. I still think he should have gave a little more effort, okay? Don't get that twisted. But you know what? I don't blame him. How can you not crash out when your coaching staff doesn't have a fucking clue about the kind of player that you are? So, on top of that, let me just try and understand the logic here, okay? Let me try and understand this. So, you get DK Metcalf in the offseason, who DK Metcalf, you know, I was on board with him for the first, third of the season, you know. But he's been very, let's say, underwhelming this year, okay? So you trade for DK Metcalf, you give him a 5-year extension on top of that. So you got no problem making a big splash trade like that, and you're not using him in the right way, okay? You're not using him. You make a trade like that. Then everyone's hyping up, oh, all the Steelers need now is a quarterback to go along with DK Metcalf and George Pickens, and this offense can look pretty good. Then you trade away George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys for a third round pick in next year's draft and a fifth round draft pick for 2027's draft. Which the draft in 2026, may I remind you, is in Pittsburgh. So, yeah, if you flunk that draft pick, you're going to be doing it right in front of the home crowd, and I guarantee you're going to be hearing boos out the ass from the fan base, okay? As if you're not already. So that's what you trade George Pickens for. Then you get Aaron Rodgers, which I'll talk about Aaron Rodgers in a little bit in this video, okay? So, you make those 3 acquisitions right there. You trade for DK Metcalf. Set up DK Metcalf and George Pickens, and boom, you got your 1-2 punch at wide receiver right there. All you need is a quarterback. Nope, you trade away Pickens to Dallas for draft picks that I have literally no doubt that you're going to flunk on. Then you get a 42-year-old quarterback after you get rid of George Pickens. And then when it comes to the trade deadline, when you're over 500, yeah, here's the best part, okay? Here's the best part about Omar Khan, the con artist who cons the fan base into thinking he's an actual competent GM, okay? And his buddy Art Rooney II is just going to keep him in as the GM, all right? Here's the best part. At the trade deadline, you don't get a wide receiver because you're scared about mortgaging a 4th and a 6th round draft pick when you need a wide receiver too, because a 4th and a 6th is all of a sudden too rich for your blood? Hello? What goes on in the head, Art? What goes on in the head, Omar? You literally made these trades earlier in the year. And now all of a sudden, nope. 4th and a 5th, or 4th and a 6th is too much for us. And you wonder why your offense remains mediocre. You wonder why this coaching staff continues to be the cheapest and among the worst in the National Football League. Art, what are you scared of? Why do you keep this coaching staff? Why? Like, are you afraid of the backlash from the fan base? Are you afraid that you're going to have a couple of down years and you're going to suck for a couple years before you build yourself back up to being a good team again? Because when tanking is done properly, it works. Okay? Let me tell you something, Art. You can afford to have this team be genuinely bad for a couple years. I mean, this team already sucks, all right? But you can afford to be genuinely bad. I'm talking about being probably the 2nd or 3rd worst team in the AFC, all right? You can afford to be genuinely bad for a few years because the Ravens aren't going anywhere. The Bengals are mediocre. They have a very good offense, but their defense is the worst in the NFL. And the Browns are always the Browns, okay? So at the very worst, you're probably going to be 3rd place in the North for a bit, maybe even finish last place. Okay? The Bills are still a great team. The Kansas City Chiefs are always going to be the Chiefs. So really, those are, and you want a perfect example of what I'm talking about? How about the Patriots? A couple years ago, they were the worst team in the NFL. Robert Kraft realized that, hey, I kept Belichick here too long. And in 2023, when the Patriots went, 4-13, I think? Kraft said, Bill, thanks for everything, but it's time to let you go. Brought in Gerard Mayo, drafted Drake May, made a horrible miscalculation with Gerard Mayo because he was terrible for Drake May's development. And Gerard Mayo went one and done as a head coach. Offseason came along, brought in a very good head coach in Mike Vrabel. And look at the Pats now. 9-game winning streak, and they're 10-2, and they look like a juggernaut in the AFC once again. So now you got those 4 teams to worry about. Like I said, those are the 4 teams that you got to worry about in the AFC. You can afford to be legitimately bad for a few years because when you do it right, like I said, tanking works. And you're looking at a situation when you are tanking, you're going to be getting a quarterback who I do not want Mike Tomlin touching, okay? Or perhaps you even have that quarterback right now in Will Howard. Oh, but we didn't want Will Howard in the draft. We wanted Tyler Shuck instead. So, depending on if Aaron Rodgers is going to play for the rest of the season or not, I could give a shit less if Aaron Rodgers doesn't play for the rest of the season because he shouldn't even be playing. He's 42 years old. He's past his prime. If you don't make the playoffs this year, which don't even tell me about the playoffs. I do not want to hear the word playoffs. I do not want to know what our scenario is for the playoffs. I don't want to fucking talk about the playoffs because it's going to be the same thing. You're going to backdoor your way into the playoffs like a fucking dumpster truck and get KO'd in the wild card once again. Do not talk to me about the damn playoffs. All right? But depending on if Aaron Rodgers plays or not, you need to see what you have in Will Howard. You need to see what you have in him. I've heard positive report after positive report after positive report about Will Howard, and you're not going to play him because, oh, we wanted Tyler Shuck. You see, that's the coaching staff that we have here. And you wonder why this coaching staff is among the worst in the NFL. And you wonder why our offense is always stale. You wonder why our offense is always boring, bland, and basic. Those are the three killer bees right there. Okay, not the killer bees from back in the day with Ben, Brown, and Boswell. Or, may as well be Boswell right now. But Ben, Brown, and Bell, okay? Those are the real killer bees right there. Boring, bland, and basic. That's what the offense is, okay? And you wonder why this team isn't always better than what they is always worse than what they should be. Because of this coaching staff. Because Art Rooney's spineless. He's scared of the fan base coming after him. So if you're scared of the backlash, then how come Robert Kraft got no backlash from anybody for firing Gerard Mayo and hiring Mike Vrabel? How come he got no backlash for that? How come the Eagles got no backlash from firing Andy Reid, getting Doug Peterson, and then firing Chip Kelly, getting Doug Peterson in his place, letting Doug Peterson walk, and then getting Nick Sirianni? How come the Philadelphia Eagles got no backlash from that? Coaching absolutely does matter. And don't even get me started on that debacle against the Chicago Bears last Sunday. Arthur Smith, you are a fucking moron. You really are. You are nothing more than Matt Canada with variety. Oh, sure, you know, Sunday was the only time in my entire life where I sat down in front of the TV and I said to myself, what a great play by Arthur Smith on that fake tush push by Kenneth Gainwell when he was just short of a touchdown. That was the only time where I thought to myself, that was a hell of a design by Arthur Smith. Oh, sure, you get the occasional eye form, you get the occasional tush push right there or whatever, but most of the time, it's just low risk, low reward, dink and dunk screen passes, no passes beyond 10 yards down the field, which is what happened with Mason Rudolph against the Chicago Bears, who were injured on defense, by the way. I did not see the Steelers attack the middle of the field at all against the Bears when they were down their best linebackers and their best corners. And you mean to tell me that, oh, Aaron Rodgers, if there's ever a game to play Aaron Rodgers, it's against the Bears in Chicago. He's fucking 25-5 in his career against the Chicago Bears. And you mean to tell me that you're not going to play him against the Bears? You mean to tell me that you don't think Aaron Rodgers can attack that banged up, crippled Bears defense? No passes beyond 10 yards down the field. No attacking the middle of the field. When you get something good on offense, you get away from it. No wide receiver from being beyond the chains, like on those back-to-back plays on 3rd and 4th down after our retarded head coach punted the ball, trailing the game, which I'll get into Tomlin in a bit, okay? But on 3rd down, little 2-yard slant on 3rd down, and then you go for it on 4th and 6. At the very least, if you're going to go for it on 4th and 6, at the very least, make sure your wide receiver is getting separation and is beyond or even at the chain if you're going to run a play like that on 4th down. This guy is clueless at play calling. Never liked the hire when it happened. Never believed in the guy. And Sunday is a perfect example of why Arthur Smith sucks ass as an offensive coordinator and why he never saw the talent in George Pickens. And then you got the coup de grace, our dumbass head coach. I can't even say the game has passed by Mike Tomlin. I can't even say that because that implies that he used to be good. This guy was always a fraud. Oh, but he won a Super Bowl, Mac. Yeah, he won a Super Bowl with 18 out of the 22 starters being the players that Bill Cowher developed. And then he made another one 2 years later when that was down to half of the players that Bill Cowher developed that was in the starting lineup with the Steelers. And then he had those same players for about 2 or 3 more years, gets his own team, and doesn't do shit with that. Oh, and even before that, okay? Even before that, he had late season collapses in 2009 when the Steelers were 6-2, lost out on winning the division there. Had a late season collapse in 2012. Steelers, I think, were 6-3 at midseason, finished 8-8, missed the playoffs. Low key did it in 2015 as well, when the Steelers had to face the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore, I think like in week 15 or 16 of that season. And the Ravens were horribly injured in that game, lost that game, and it came down to week 17 where they got lucky to even make the playoffs because the Bills beat the Jets, and we got to play the Cleveland Browns that year. Okay? So you low-key did it in 2015. The only difference is you made the playoffs there. Let's see. You absolutely fell flat on your face in 2018, 7-2-1 to 9-6-1. Didn't even make the playoffs. Missed out on winning the division. And hey, for as much credit that I give Mike Tomlin for 2019 because you didn't have Big Ben that year, guess what? You were still 8-5. And you still had a really good chance of making the playoffs. Didn't make the playoffs, even though you finished 8-8. Big Ben was out for basically the whole year that year. Still missed the playoffs at 8-5. You collapsed in 2020. You collapsed in 2023 even. You collapsed last year horrifically. And you did it just earlier this year. So that's 8 season collapses that Mike Tomlin has had in 18 years as a head coach. 8 collapses. But yeah, let's talk about that Bears game a little bit. So you're down 31-28. Mason Rudolph scrambles for a 22-yard gain. It gets called back because of illegal formation, and Aaron Rodgers is on the sideline screaming at the O-line because he knew that the O-line was fucked up. He knew that the O-line wasn't lined up properly. So when Aaron Rodgers knows that the O-line isn't lined up properly and you don't know it, what the fuck does that say about Mike Tomlin as a head coach? And then you punt on 4th down when you are trailing the game and you got bailed out by the defense right there instead of going for it on 4th down. Like, if you trusted your defense right there, oh, it's because Tomlin trusted the defense. Well, guess what? If Tomlin trusted the defense, that got destroyed all day by the Chicago Bears. And he gave him a chance to seal the game, and all they needed was a 1st down in that situation when you had no timeouts left. So if you truly had faith in your defense, why not go for it on 4th down and then hold the Bears to kick in a field goal to make it a 6-point game and then be in a position to where a touchdown can win you the game? This guy has no clue on what offense is. Oh, it's because he's a defensive-minded coach. Yes, I've seen defensive-minded coaches win in today's league. I've seen it. But this guy has no fucking clue how offense works. He has no clue on how the game has evolved. None. And then on top of that, on that fourth down that I talked about with Arthur Smith, where the Steelers comically were short of the chains, you mean to tell me that you called Chris Boswell a serial killer earlier in the season when he hit a 60-yard field goal in week 1 against the Jets to win you the game, and now all of a sudden you have no faith in him to hit it from 64, 65 yards away to tie the game and just at the very worst send that game to overtime? You mean to tell me that you have no faith in Boswell making a field goal from that range? He could have made that kick from the parking lot. That 60-yarder that he made against the Jets, it would have been good for the longest field goal in NFL history. It would have been good from about 67 or 68. Would have been the longest field goal in NFL history. But now you don't trust him to make a 64 or 65-yarder with no wind in Chicago. Go figure, the city that's nicknamed the Windy City has no wind on that particular day. And you don't trust him to make a field goal from there when your offense is getting no passes completed beyond 10 yards all day with no wind? This is who we have as a head coach. And this is who we are stuck with as head coach until at least 2027. This is who we're stuck with. No wonder George Pickens is crashing out. No wonder. No wonder he crashed out when he was here. Because this coaching staff doesn't have a clue on how he works. They don't have a clue. And wouldn't you look at it down in Dallas? Here's a stat for you, by the way. Here's a nice stat for you. George Pickens has 1,044 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns with the Dallas Cowboys this year. Okay? That's easily the best season of his career. The Pittsburgh Steelers as a wide receiver. Okay, so he's almost doubled his career high in touchdowns with the Steelers and the Cowboys in one season. And I have no doubt that he's going to get at least 2 more touchdowns, so he is going to double it, okay? But the Pittsburgh Steelers collectively, as a wide receiver core this year on offense, you know how many receiving yards they have total? 1,014. You heard that right. George Pickens has more receiving yards than the entire Steelers receiving core. Let that sink in. And you want to make it hurt even more about how inept this coaching staff is? Because you know me, I always got stats for you. Here's some more stats for you that really showcase how little this coaching staff knows about talent. They wouldn't know talent if it smacked them right in front of the face. But here's some stats for you. Let's see. These are the Steelers' top 10 highest paid players this year. TJ Watt, who you gave an extension to, and I said at the end of last year that the Steelers should trade him because he ain't going to win shit here. Okay, he just surpassed his older brother JJ last week in career sacks, and he has nothing to show for it. But TJ Watt, he is trending backwards. He has the worst sack average for a full season since he was a rookie, and you extended him. Cam Hayward, who the off-season drama with him, okay? Now I'm starting to think, I really believe that he was holding out because of the fucking coaching staff, all right? But Cam Hayward, he has 1.5 sacks this year after he had 8 last year. Alex Highsmith, he's dealt with injuries all off season, and he's missed 4 games this year, and the Steelers are 3-1 without him this year. So that tells you how unvaluable Alex Highsmith is to this team, and yet you give him a bag. You got Patrick Queen. PFF ranks him 75th out of 83 linebackers this year. So way to go right there. Pat Freiermuth, he lost his starting role, and his yards per game is down 30%, and he is 27th among NFL tight ends in receiving yards. You got DK Metcalf, who I said at the very beginning of this video, who you traded for, and now all of a sudden, getting a receiver at the deadline for a 4th and a 6th is too rich for your blood, apparently. But DK Metcalf this season, he has 112 total yards and no touchdowns the last 4 games, which is the worst average of his entire career. You got Isaac Seumalo, who's injured, and he currently ranks 41st among guards by PFF. You got Darius Slay, lost his starring role, and he is 72nd ranked in corners. You got Jonnu Smith, ranked dead last among 38 tight ends by PFF, and he is down 36 yards per average a game from last year. And then you want the real big one that everyone was hyping up all season before it even began. Here it is. Aaron Rodgers. PFF ranks him the 32nd best starting quarterback in the NFL this season. That's how little this coaching staff knows about talent. That's how little this front office knows about talent. So does it really shock you that George Pickens was acting out in Pittsburgh? He was acting out in Pittsburgh because this coaching staff didn't know how to use him. He was crashing out in Pittsburgh because he wasn't getting the ball. Yes, okay, he didn't want to be a Steeler, but he didn't want to be a Steeler for the reasons that you think it was. He didn't want to be a Steeler because he didn't want this coaching staff no more. Let me ask you this. If the Pittsburgh Steelers coaching staff was even remotely close to the Cowboys coaching staff, do you think Pickens would stay with the Steelers? To me, that's a definitive yes. We could have Pickens to Metcalf. Aaron Rodgers throwing to those two. Just think about that. And we could have put first place out of reach for the Baltimore Ravens. And no, it doesn't shock me in the least bit that the Steelers blew this to the Ravens when they started 1-5, when the Steelers had, a 3.5, 4 game lead on them, when Lamar Jackson missed like a month of the season. Yeah, that don't surprise me, considering Mike Dumlin's track record of choking and imploding in the season. Can you even really call it choking anymore? Seriously, can you even call it choking anymore? Because the thing is, when you choke, it means that you fail when you're expected to do well. All right? This isn't even choking. This is just who Mike Tomlin is. So it's not even choking. And now we're 6-5, season's over by Thanksgiving. Looking at the rest of the season, yeah, you are not beating Buffalo on a Sunday. You're not beating Buffalo. And if you do beat him, it's because Josh Allen beats himself, like how you always win games nowadays. Okay? Not beating Buffalo. Not beating Baltimore in Week 14. You may be able to beat Miami, but I wouldn't sleep on the Dolphins. You are sure as hell not beating Detroit. You may not even beat Cleveland. The Dolphins and Browns are like the only 2 winnable games that you have left on the schedule. All right? And I'm not sleeping on either of them because the Dolphins have actually been playing kind of good since they fired Chris Greer. And the Browns, yeah, that should be a game that you should win. But guess what? You can't beat the Browns in Cleveland no more. Ever since the Browns had that 0-16 year, you've only beaten the Browns once in Cleveland. Once. And that was in Big Ben's last season. You have only beaten the Browns one time in Cleveland since they went 0-16. I'm not even sleeping on that game. And hey, the Browns upset the Packers. The Browns could upset the 49ers too. I'm not sleeping on the Browns. And then you end the year off playing the Ravens. You may win that game too because the Ravens will probably have the division locked up and they'll be resting their starters. And you'll beat their backups. Oh, no, wait. You know what? Remember 2019 when the Ravens had the North locked up right there in their 14-2 year and Lamar's unanimous MVP season? You played the Ravens in Baltimore and you got smacked around silly by their backups with your playoff hopes on the line. So I'm not even sleeping on that game either. So, yeah, looking at the rest of the schedule, there are, at the very least, 3 more losses. Your best case scenario is 9-8. Yeah, another 9-8 season. Yet another 9-8 season. Saving it from the clutches of defeat from the losing season. When the fact of the matter is, Mike Tomlin should have had about 4 or 5 losing seasons by now, which is more than Bill Cowher had, by the way. But that's all this fan base cares about. Like I said, I will not blame another player on this team for crashing out and half-assing their play as long as they are under this coaching staff. I may not condone it, but I understand it. Because the difference between being in Pittsburgh and being somewhere else and being under a coaching staff that knows your strengths as a player is night and day. When George Pickens was here, he looked like Limas Swede. Now that he's down in Dallas, he looks like the second coming of Jerry Rice. So congratulations, Art Rooney II. You are now officially more incompetent than Jerry Jones. Congratulations. You made Jerry Jones, a guy who traded Micah Parsons a week before the season began for nothing. You made him look competent in a trade. Congratulations. It is absolutely pitiful what this franchise has become. Absolutely fucking pitiful. You know, I sit back, man, and I look at these franchises like Philadelphia, Kansas City, the Rams, San Francisco, New England, Baltimore. I sit back, I look at these franchises that crave winning, that strive to win. They want to win. They'll win by any means necessary. They'll do anything to bring home a Lombardi. They don't do the stupid shit that the Steelers do. They don't do it. They see talent, they build around it. They see talent, they find the strengths in the player. They don't ship them off and they don't put them out of position. They actually know how to develop them. You take a guy like CA3 and you take a guy like CA3, for example, and you put him on the Rams or 49ers, he'll look like an all-star. He'll look like the superstar receiver he was meant to be. But over here, he looks like some random dude running go routes because this coaching staff doesn't have a fucking clue how to use them. I'm just so done with this, man. I am so done with this coaching staff. I really am. That's it. That's all. That's all I got. That's all I got for this video. Have a good one, everybody.